Normally when I'm looking at people, I'm in a hole, so I normally see your boots and ankles, so it's quite nice seeing some heads today. Hopefully the talk will be up to it. As Gary says, what now? Or now what? What can I do when I get back to the farm? It's a massive, massive topic, and I often get accused of when I do talks, it's about generics. Well, it's got to be about generics, because I understand that you're all totally different people. You're all totally different in your aspirations about what you want to happen on the farm. And you should be. There's been talk about selling carbon, talk about being profitable. You know, how long should your aspirations be? You know, there's certain people who've got a 3, 4, 5 generation plan for their land. Some people have got a 1-year plan. Who's right, who's wrong? It doesn't matter. It's what you want to do. It's a bit like when I say things like Twitter. Love Twitter. Filter it, but do what you want to do. Don't follow what Johnny's doing down the road, because it'll fail. Because you're not in the same position that they are. The other part I think we've got to remember is, what is your farming system? What are you doing on your farm? I think we're talking about different rotations on different areas. So the aspiration on one part of the farm may be the same, but how we go about it on the 2 bits of the farm will be different. And that takes quite a lot of management. So that's what we could do. What I'd quite like to start, or where I would start, is kind of bust a myth. And the myth I want to bust is that soil is your biggest asset. I don't believe it is. You can disagree? Anyone disagree? Come on, give me a fight. Soil is your biggest asset. You can read it everywhere. It's your biggest asset. Well, an asset, from the Oxford Dictionary, is a useful or valuable thing or person. Can't be one-dimensional. Won't be one-dimensional. So if you think about that, soil could actually be your biggest liability, couldn't it? It doesn't have to be your asset, it could be your biggest liability. You can create it into an asset, it's only due to how you manage it. And I think we've got to sort of think a little bit, and it's always the soil's fault, isn't it? It's whatever happens. You know? The soil felt hungry, it ate my tractor. Bloody soil. Oh, the soil didn't like me, it sneaked away in the middle of the night. Damn that soil. Or you've got the blatant soil, it sneaks away in the middle of the day. It's running away from you. Polluter will pay. So at that point, our soils are a liability, not an asset. And the reason they're a liability is because how we manage them. There's lots of really, really good soil, double cropping veg land that's worth, £20,000 an acre. Some people aren't making money on that. But chemically, they are far better than maybe a soil on the top of Wales, growing sheep, but the sheep man's making lots of money. Who's right? The person that understands their soil. And that's part of what this whole conference is about and where we fit in. If you look at what a soil's function is, and again, I apologise for going right back to basics, what is a soil there for? It's there to give us a living, isn't it? Of course not. Soil, a couple of 3 things about soils. Soil is there, fundamental function of it is to grow plants. Nutrient cycling, organic matters, etc. Food production, that's what we guys are involved in. It's there for carbon sequestration and carbon balancing within the world. Filter and buffer water, as you saw earlier in those pictures, they're doing a lot of that well. It's a biological habitat and diversity. Someone mentioned earlier in the speech about diversity. Diversity is massive. Just look around the room. You're all involved in agriculture. You're all quite different, I hope. They're the way I look at what soil's function should be. If we manage those soils well, they'll support all those functions. And in doing that, we've got a healthy soil. Everyone's chasing this healthy soil thing. What is it? Well, if it's doing all those things for you, it is a healthy soil. That's what a healthy soil should do. What should a soil's manager function be? What's your function as a soil manager? I'm quite one-dimensional. It's to be profitable. I know someone said they didn't want to be profitable, bless them, but we've got to be profitable in what we're doing when managing soils. And to do that, as a Wall Street trader basically said if you want to be profitable, you need to start by measuring. You can't manage what you can't measure, and things you do measure will tend to improve. Now that's why, those that have known me for a while, I spend a lot of time measuring things. If you measure it, you can manage it. It doesn't matter what you're measuring. We're talking about carbon today. But we need to measure in order to understand what we're doing. Now, a lot of the measurements we've done over the last 20, 30 years have been based on chemistry and physics, because they're really easy to do. Chemistry and physics are really easy. Biology, a little bit more left field, harder to do. There are more biological tests coming out. However, when you ever talk about a soil, we talk about the physics, the chemistry, and the biology. But we really, really focus on the chemistry and the physics because we can measure them. But also we can see what we're doing. So if you take physics, we can go in there, we've got a green field, we plough it. Oh, it's gone brown, job done. We can measure chemistry, green field, glyphosate it, gone brown, job done. But it's very difficult to understand what the effect that has on biology. Now, quite a lot of the meetings I do, we talk about physics, chemistry, and biology. Everyone gets excited about physics and chemistry. And I say, is anyone here a biological farmer? Everyone looks at the floor. No, don't smoke wacky backy, haven't got beard or sandals. Well, we're all biological farmers, aren't we? We're growing a crop, livestock. But we've kind of forgotten that fact, and we are focusing much more on chemistry and physics. But we have to look at them all together, and that's where the whole healthy soils thing starts. So it is about the soil. It's not your most valuable asset, it's your most manageable asset. And what we do with it will affect it. Healthy soils will give you better structure, will reduce cultivations. Good news. Healthy soils, again, will increase water holding capacity. Brilliant news. Which will increase yield. Great. Healthy soils, better nutrient use efficiency. I've used the word nutrient because we all seem to get hung up on nitrogen. Every nutrient is important. That will mean less fertilizer. What does that all mean? Well, less fuel. Increased nutrient use efficiencies. Lower emissions. Ooh, the carbon's come into it suddenly. What does that then mean? If we're doing this, we will naturally increase soil carbon, I believe. That will lead to lower costs. That will lead to lower CO2 emissions. It's all joined together. To me, it's really, really quite straightforward. Some really good, simple farm management practices that will do this for us. And Nick and Tom explained about it earlier, what they're doing. Nothing revolutionary, guys, I'm afraid, but it's working, isn't it? Exactly what we're trying to do. So it can be really simple to see what you could do. Again, anyone that knows me, my favourite tool, a spade. Everyone should have a spade. That's where it starts with. And you can go into a field, dig a hole, have a look at what's going on through the soil profile. Structure. A lot of talk of structure this morning. These haven't come out that well. When I go into a field, one of the first things I do is dig a hole about 20 metres away from a hedge and then go to the hedge. Dig a hole in the hedge and put the two soils side by side. There's two examples here. They've come out really badly on the screen. And at that point, all I'm really trying to emphasise is look at what the hedge is doing without our interference, without our clever management. And you look at it and the soil is much darker brown, it's got better structure, it smells nice. And that weirdly, that hedge is growing really, really well without any input. And then you look into the field, you've got slightly more blocky structure. Soil's not performing maybe as well, doesn't smell that nice. So that's a really simple measure of how to do it, using your eyes, your nose, and your fingers. Or you can get quite funky, as the guy was doing earlier, and we do it with things like Terramap. We digitalise what we can see with our hands and fingers, and put it on a map. And we can then see, there's Nick's farm here, the different layers that we can put in there, which can be sand, silt, clay content, it can be carbon content, active carbon content, all those layers that we can then go to say, right, why is that much higher here than it is here? Is it a soil type thing? Is it a management practice thing? How do we then address it? And we address it by making plans, really boring things. And the plans will be different depending on whether it's a rotational thing, a soil type thing, all sorts of reasons why. And the message that keeps coming round and round and round, there is no silver bullet. There isn't. But one of the most important things to do is measure it so we can then manage it, understand what we've got. But we've been doing planning for years, haven't we? Nutrient management plan, been around for donkey's years. We're measuring soil mineral nitrogen. We make a break-even ratio with the cost of wheat, or price of wheat and the cost of fertilizer. We analyze the grain, and then we evaluate our nitrogen nutrient use efficiency. However, I believe we've been focusing far too much on these bits because they're really easy to do. It's a calculation, tap it in, oh, yeah, tick that box. What's the price? Oh, it can go up and down. It's an easy calculator. When it comes to this bit, oh, it was a poor nitrogen use efficiency. Okay, tick that box, poor me, walk off. What we've got to do is drill into this. Why? And that's where the whole healthy soil service comes in. Find out why the levels are doing what they're doing and what can we do to influence them. The trigger for that is measure, do soil analysis. That will should lead to, with the right advice, improved fertilizer use. That'll lead to lower costs, lower CO2, part of today, increased profitability. Now these last three, I don't really care which way you put them round, but they are fundamentally what we're about. Enhancing your soil performance. Now, I think it was Nigel mentioned it earlier, that I think people have forgotten that you put a kilo of nitrogen on your soil, it respires 16 kilos of carbon, doesn't it, in microbial activity? Massive, massive win by improved new fertilizer use. I think Tom was talking about 150 plus 30 through the leaf. Massive change to how your soils will perform. Huge. So the service that we've designed to wrap the whole thing up is a healthy soil service that covers all those elements. And it's designed basically to enhance our and your soil knowledge, which will deliver better management practices for economical, sustainable farming. Bloody mouthful, which basically means good farm practice. Nice and simple. And one of the key things to do when you do this is to do the easy bits first, the low-hanging fruit, fertilizer. You know, what can we do to enhance our nutrient use efficiency or nitrogen use efficiency? Fuel. Again, Tom was talking about it, 10 litres down to 7 for 4. What can we do to improve our fuel use? Less cultivation. Now, I'm not against cultivation if we need to cultivate, but check if we need to do it. Livestock farmers, huge amount of imported feed. Why aren't we growing our own? Why aren't we making relationships with the next door farmer who's got a chicken farm? Let's grow our own protein. Peas, beans, oats together, sell it to them. Don't worry, everyone will say you can't do it. That's what everyone keeps telling me, oh, can't do this, can't do. Why can't we do it? Because we've never questioned it. You can do all that, and then you can get, again, as I said, funky with it. You can put it onto a mapping system that we've got. And that mapping system could be right down to, which Becky's supporting, well, the carbon kit behind it is looking at kilos of carbon per kilos of produce used, litres of fuel used across the area. All those things can be mapped and then go, well, that's a really bad area. What are we going to go and do about it? Can we do something about it? Let's go and have a look. The obvious thing is that when we look at healthy soils, it fits with everything you're doing on your farm. Healthy soils. Everywhere. So whether that's, we want to map it, it'll link to healthy soils. The amount of nutrition we use, linked to healthy soils. Farmyard manure management, links to healthy soils. Cover crops. We talked about carbon before. We can use farmyard manures, bring compost on. Why don't we grow our own carbon? I think Nigel put some slides up. We spend a lot of time measuring our cover crops. We're capturing 2, 3, 4, 5 tons of carbon in some really big cover crops. That's a lot of compost. Let's grow it. Performance. Natural capital, other areas we should be taking out and putting into environmental schemes even. The bit that makes life an awful lot easier is you've got the Omnia planning, you've got digital platforms to do that on. Rather than me standing in a field with loads of bits of paper saying, well, do this, 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 and this, there are ways of making it easy. So back to the start, where do we start? Again, fairly obvious, but it's design a strategy that suits your farm and your aspirations. Involve us, we're happy to be involved. The measure bit is really important too. We need to measure it to improve the input use to reflect the output. Anyone here farm on hope? Don't, please don't. Understand what you're trying to do and measure and grow into it. If we know there's areas of low production, let's try and find out what the causes are, and if we can remedy them, let's do it. That could be less cultivation, more cultivation, it could be all sorts of stuff. I don't know, because there's no blueprint. If there are areas that we do highlight that we really, really cannot improve, then well, let's look at putting them into something that will enhance them. Stewardship, ELMs, environmental schemes, any number of things. But the major point is that we need to have a strategy that suits what you're doing on your farm and where you want to take it. And on that note, thank you very much.